Hello, everybody. It's amazing to see all of you out here tonight in person. I still am at the stage where I'm excited every time we do an in-person event. Like, it's like amazing. We finally did it again. But this is a big one, and so thank you for all coming out tonight. Welcome. I wanted to just start with let you know what we're going to be doing today. So I'm just going to start with some open remarks here. And then what we're going to do after the opening remarks is we're going to split up into two different rooms. So folks who want to listen to the Android content, that'll be in this room here. This is the Boston Common Room. And then just across the hall, where you were just all gathering out there, is the Esplanade Room. That's where we'll be doing the cloud talks. And so we'll have 3 consecutive talks in those rooms. We'll do some closing remarks. I changed the order a little bit. We'll do some closing remarks in the breakout rooms, and then everyone will get back together in the main area for some pizza and some networking and socializing. So we're very much looking forward to that. So why are we here? Hopefully you guys know that this is Google I/O Extended 23 Boston. And what that is, it is literally an extension of the big Google I/O event that happened in California last month, or actually it's 2 months ago now almost, in May. And so how many of you were participating, let's say watching virtually, the Google I/O content? Did any of you get a chance to check in on that? Awesome. There were some great keynotes. Some of us were very lucky that we were able to attend in person. Yep, we have some of the co-organizers over there. And so we were just really excited to do like a community event based around all the excitement of Google I/O, and we thank you all for coming to join us. If you didn't attend Google I/O, then we just wanted to give you a little summary of some of the content that was presented there. So we have this short video that we'd like you to watch.
AI, generative AI, generative AI, generative AI, AI. It uses AI to bring AI.
So even if you weren't able to attend in person, you probably were able to get a sense of what the event was pretty heavily about. So before we get any further, I'd just like to point out that we do have a code of conduct here. We're very serious about it. And the main thing about this, it's pretty simple. We have a link there you can click on if you want to like read the full thing. But the idea is we want people to be nice, to be respectful and constructive, to be collaborative, and to participate. You know, this is a community. We're here building community. We're trying to bring diverse groups of people together who are interested in tech and interested in growing their careers and everything. And so we want this to be a safe place for everyone. If anything happens that makes any of you feel uncomfortable, please reach out to one of the organizers, myself, or the folks you see over there who I'll introduce momentarily. But yes, this is very important to us. This community aspect is the reason we're all here together. So this event is actually a collaboration between a bunch of different groups. I am the lead organizer of the GDG Cloud Boston group, and so I, along with several co-organizers, run a series of meetups. We meet between 4 and 12 times a year, I would say. And our content, we focus on cloud content. But this event, we've worked together with a bunch of other groups as well. So I wanted to introduce those other groups. GDG Boston Android, led by Elizabeth and Cigar over there. And our group, GDG Cloud Boston. Microphone. I don't hear what you're saying. Am I not speaking into it enough? Is that what it is? This microphone. We got it. We have people streaming online, and I was not speaking into the correct microphone for them. So thank you for clearing that up. So, but while we're doing the GDG Cloud Boston introductions, I just wanted to point out Norbert and Melody over there are helping with the live stream. And Joe and Roya also help organize that group, and they're not here right now, but Roya will probably be here a little later, so we'll introduce her when she arrives. Also, the GDG Lawrence group has helped out, and Roman is here. it's a pleasure really for us to all be able to work together on these events. We can have bigger events, we have a greater sense of community, and so it's really special for us. And I wanted to point out the GDG Capital Region. Our friend Linda, who runs the GDG Capital Region, she's been immensely helpful in all of our events because she's basically handling the virtual aspect. So while we're here trying to attend to all the folks who are in person, we also have a bunch of attendees who are in the chat online and who are watching on video. And Linda has been helping make sure that all the technical aspects of that are working out. So we're really grateful for her participation. So these are the names of the people who are all involved. I actually, I have to just stop for 1 second because Roya has arrived. Roya, come up here. Roya is one of our new co-organizers who joined us last year. She was not here when we were just introducing everyone, but this is Roya. Say hello.
Hey everybody. Hi. You're just making me blush all the time.
That's all right. You don't need to stay up here, but I just wanted to make sure everyone got to see you. And since I was in the middle of introducing all the organizers. But please, if you're interested in participating in these events going forward, please join the different groups. If you're interested in Android, please join GDG Boston Android. Our group focuses on cloud, and Roman's group actually is pretty across the gamut, right? Wouldn't you say?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, anything Google related you can get from the GDG Lawrence group, so check them out. So today, as I mentioned, we have 2 different tracks going on. So in this room here, the Boston Common Room, you'll have the Android track. We have Amy and Nishtha, who are going to be speaking about developing for developing economies. Then we have Mohit, who's going to be talking about building multi-platform apps with Compose. And then we have Sierra, who's going to be speaking about, watch this, building apps for Wear OS. That's all going on in this room here. Oh, let me go back one. And then the cloud track is going to be in the Esplanade room just across the way. Marissa is going to be speaking about using Google Cloud for precision medicine. And then we have 2 generative AI talks, which are in the theme of the video I played earlier. One with Kashana from Google, and one with Rabimba, who traveled into town as our remote speaker today. So we're very grateful to have him too. Now, I think many of you probably have a Google Developers profile. If you've set up a GDG account, then you have a profile where you can earn some badges for different things. And today, you can earn a badge for attending this event. And literally, all you need to do is go to that link that I'm showing on the screen, and I'll leave it up there for just a moment. You go to that link, you make sure you're logged in with your Google Developer profile, and then you will get that fancy little green badge in your profile that shows that you attended Google I/O Extended. And it's pretty a neat thing, actually. I've earned quite a few badges. Like, my preference now is to actually earn the physical pins, the enamel pins, which some of the conferences have started giving out, but this is a close second for me. Okay, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what this overall group is that we're here about. Like, how did we all get together? Why do we even do this? And so what GDG is, it's part of this larger Google developer ecosystem, which contains a number of different communities that are meant to reach out to the people who are using these products and give them, the ability to collaborate and to learn from each other. And so I'm going to skip this slide. The 4 programs that make up this developer communities are the GDG, which is the Google Developer Groups. That's what our groups are. We are these independent volunteer organizers who've decided to, try and stand up a community on a certain topic in a certain region. And we are lucky enough that we get to have some sponsorship from Google. Google will help us with some content that we can present, like this event has a lot of Google-provided content that's available. And they provide sponsorship for some of the catering and some of the locations that we need in order to host the events. And so that's an amazing thing. There's also the Women Tech Makers program, which is a program. I think we have a bunch of women tech makers in the room. Could some of the women tech makers raise their hands? Yeah, so we have these. The Women Tech Makers program is, a program that's designed to make tech more accessible to women and to bring more women into tech. And so we have these great ambassadors who are here with us today. Please reach out to them during the social event if you want to learn more about the program. But yes, we're so grateful to be able to collaborate with the WTM. And then there's another program called the GDE program. This is the Google Developer Experts. These are individual engineers, experts, coders, developers, various kinds of tech folks in different areas of expertise within the Google product line. And what they will do is they will apply to be a Google Developer Expert. They need to get nominated by an existing Googler. So there's a little bit of a process to get into it. And there's an interview process and whatnot. But once you become a Google Developer Expert, then you not only are on this list of directory of experts, but then on Google's behalf, you can go give talks and sort of share your knowledge with others. And so Rabimba is a good example of a Google Developer Expert. When we wanted to host our event as a GDG, we can post into the Google community and say, oh, we're going to be hosting an event in Boston, and we're looking for speakers who can speak about this. And then someone like Rabimba can submit a talk to the event, and then Google will actually take care of his travel expenses so he can come here and speak. And so that's a great opportunity if you're thinking about growing your career in Google tech area. You might consider pushing for Google Developer Expert. I am very happy to be a Google Developer Expert in cloud. And Joe, our other co-organizer who is not here today, is also a Google Developer Expert in cloud, and we're very excited to be part of the program. So we would love if you joined.
Do we have any other GDEs?
Yeah, are there other GDEs in the room? I think Roman is a GDE. He's being shy over there. Oh, we have some GDEs in the back there as well. What are you a GDE in? Kotlin, excellent. So there's GDEs in all different product areas. My focus is cloud, his is Kotlin, yours is web. And Roman, you have a couple?
Flutter? No, Flutter.
Just Flutter, okay. He only has Flutter right now, but he'll be adding more, I'm sure. And finally, I want to talk about the Google Developer Student Clubs. So this is similar to the GDG organizations that I mentioned earlier, where you have a volunteer who has decided to start a group. That group is located within their university. And so these are students in the university. They're starting these groups for the same kind of idea, but they want to get community together with the rest of the students at the school and help train and upskill people. And we do have a bunch of GDSC folks here as well. Is that correct? Can some of the GDSCs raise their hands? I have at least one, right?
A new club starting.
A brand new GDSC club. Where at Wesleyan?
The application is submitted.
Amazing. Congratulations. We're excited to have a new club at Wesleyan University in Connecticut. That's awesome. And this is just another opportunity to help connect with people and grow. We really like inviting all the GDSCs to our events and even having them come speak about the projects they're working on. So we look forward to collaborating with your GDSC as well. And that is about those groups. These are individual pages about all the stuff that I just said. This is for the speaker? For me? Okay, right. And finally, I wanted to mention our sponsors. Of course, Google, who has provided this amazing space where we're all going to be enjoying today. They also provided the food that you're all going to be having after the talks. And in general, they've just been extremely supportive of our organization. I will say that I started running this meetup group independently, unawares that there was a GDG program. And so we were me and Joe were kind of slugging it along, trying to get the group started. And then Google was like, hey, did you know there's GDGs and we could just sponsor you and start giving you money and helping your group run? And I was like, what's the catch? I can't say no to that. And so since we did that in 2017, now it's been 6 years that we've had this great relationship with the GDG. So Google's an excellent sponsor. And then today we have our sponsor Postmates. I don't know if all of you got the flyer that Roman was handing out. If you haven't gotten one, please connect with Roman during the break and make sure you got one.
Do not take a picture and send it to your friends. That's all I can say. Just one per person.
Listen, we highly value our relationships with our sponsors, and Postmates has been incredibly generous to give everyone the ability to spend $25 in the next, there's some time window, Roman?
The 25th.
Okay, they have until the 25th, so this is incredibly generous of them, so please do not abuse this. We want to be able to offer these sort of things to our guests in the future. Okay. So that is the opening session. Those are the opening comments. What we're going to do is just quickly break so that folks who want to check out the Cloud Talks can move over into the other room there. And if you're planning to see the Android Talks, you can stay in this room. And if you want to move around, feel free. I mean, the rooms are very close, so you can check out a little bit of one talk and then go to the other room if you wish. But please just take a few moments to get into the correct room, and then we'll be starting again very shortly.
All right, folks. Showtime. All right, good evening, all. Welcome. I know that it would have been difficult for you to select between Android and cloud, but I'm glad that you joined Android track over cloud. I know that the cloud track would be equally good. But anyways, here we are. Well, Google I/O is all about learning the latest and greatest about Google developer ecosystems. And I/O Extended is about taking it a little bit forward where we share all of that knowledge with the community. So I'm one of the co-organizers. I have a meetup which I share with my amazing co-organizer, Beth, over there. So I'm going to do a little bit promotion of my group. So I run this meetup called Boston Android. If you have not yet joined our group, then please make sure to join it. I see many familiar faces over here who have joined and enjoyed. They can vouch for it. It's an amazing group. We also have a Slack channel. It's pretty much, I would say, yeah, very much collaborative if we are not active, but we do our best in answering all of the questions from the community, pointing out to the latest resources and whatnot. We also have a social media presence on Twitter and Android. All of these talks would be live streamed in this particular channel, so let your friend and family know that they can watch over here, and they're going to be recorded and be available for later viewing as well. We are planning to run a Compose camp starting from July 5th. And this is your opportunity to get started with the modern Android development skills if you have not already. Our friend Anton over there has been gracious enough to give us a space in Accenture office. And we're going to run it for like 5 whole weeks. And it would be hosted by yours truly. So I'll see probably a few of you there. All righty.
Summer camp, yeah.
Right? It's going to be fun. Now, without further ado, let me introduce the amazing speakers who would be speaking right now. Amay, who is working for the government of University of Colorado for the digital services, I believe. And there's Nishtha, who used to work at one of the leading telecommunication platforms in India called Jio. They're going to talk about what it takes for developing communities. So let's give them a big hand.
We can see. Okay. Thank you. Hello. Yeah. So, how are you, everyone? I'm not able to hear anything. How are you? Great. That's it. So I'm Amir. I'm like the student of the Northeastern University doing the Masters of Information Systems. And I have worked a couple of years back in India and like in Android, in digital marketing, in blockchain, like a lot of domains. And later I decided to pursue Masters. So right now I'm here at the Boston. Can you just, yeah. So like apart from my background, like I'm also the Indian classical, like whenever I'm free, I'm also practicing the Indian classical vocal music, and I'm also a hobbyist poet. And till now, like I have worked on a couple of applications, a couple of websites, couple of products which are being used by millions of people worldwide. Next. Yeah. So first of all, here, like this talk is basically going to get focused on the developing economies like India, Bangladesh, Nepal, where there are no high-end devices, there are only budget devices. So right now, the first thing is what we should do, like let's say if your organization doesn't have budget, and let's say if you want to test it on other devices, is you can install the custom ROM. So custom ROM, like for those who don't know, is just kind of layered Android operating system, which is built on the top of AOSP, that is Android open source project, which is provided by Google. And like developers make the customizations into that version of Android. For example, let's say if I'm having a Samsung phone, and if let's say if I want to test the how my application will work on Xiaomi, then I cannot do that in a normal way. So like I can change the operating system of the Samsung and put in the Xiaomi operating system, put in the Oppo operating system, put in the Techno or whatever the brands are there. And believe me, this if you apply like even just 2 to 3 custom ROMs, this is going to save you thousands of dollars. Plus this is going to like potentially generate millions of dollars into the revenue. Because like here in the US, we have a couple of devices in Android, but let's say in developing economies like India, we have like 500 devices, and again, it doesn't matter like whether you have money or not, but it's not possible to buy 500 devices every single year just to your office and test them manually. Second thing is study the market, as I told. So the devices are going to be the budget, though definitely like the Android Marshmallow or the Nougat or the Pi or 910, like they are getting outdated, but like we have seen a lot of old Android versions in the developing economies like India. So third point is how to select a ROM. So to select a ROM, basically you go to XDA and you search for the highest selling device into your market. For example, in India, the highest selling devices like it was like under Xiaomi, like in Nepal it might be different. And just list out the custom ROMs over there. So in the XDA, like you can note it down if you want, highest selling devices into your region. And second thing is most number of custom ROMs which are available for that devices. So this is how like you can pick the devices and which custom ROM which is the best. Titanium is just kind of the backup tool that we can get so that let's say while changing the ROM, let's say if you decide to change the ROM from Samsung to Xiaomi or let's say from Oppo to Vivo, you do not have to install every single app every time. You can just download that Titanium backup and then you can install like take the backup of your phone and install all of the application at once. And yeah, so again, don't forget me to send few docs. Like I'm always open. It's just me. Yeah, next. So thank you. So know your user. So first of all, when you test, let's say, it doesn't matter in the test lab or the AVD or in the physical device, no one runs, like, there is not a single user who is running a single app of yours. The user, like, because in our cases, we have observed the user has typically 50 to 60 applications running at once on the phone. And like a lot of applications means a lot of job schedulers, but that means a lot of background services, a lot of broadcast receivers, like a lot of computation is going on. So basically make sure that you, if it's possible, then like in our case, we actually used to have, like being a security application, we used to get the data of all of the applications from the user with the user's consent, so that we know which applications users are using, so that we will actually get to know, for example, our app may not be compatible with app A, may not be compatible with the app B may not be compatible with the app C. There might be some kind of notification conflicts, or there might, let's say, if someone else's, other app is using floating notification window permission, and we are not able to use this. So there are a lot of things that you will be able to determine when you actually study those metrics. Then background activities, again, as I told, is like apart from your app, a lot of background services are going on. And yeah, in developing economies, the SaaS model, like, so if you decide to sell software as a service, or let's say if you decide to actually have a premium or freemium model, it's a low probability that it's not going to work, because we have tried. And then in terms of developing economies, like right now, like Google is doing pretty good, but yeah, like I would stick with the free and a ad-based model. And yeah, so using this data accurately is very important. So like whenever, let's say, if you see the crashes, let's say, the issue reproduction is very important. So like in your Play Store console or even in the Firebase Crashlytics, you will see a lot of crashes and all those things. So by using of the custom ROMs and all of those things, you can actually end up reproducing those bugs and reproducing those issues, so that it will be easier for you to fix them. Yeah, so this is the QR code that you can scan. This is what like we have struggled in India. As I told, like in India, there are a lot of brands, Oppo, Vivo, like Mango, like a lot of other brands are there. But the problem is, let's say if you want a simple add to start permission, then default Android intent won't work. You actually have to write the custom intents of, like, it might be the floating window, it might be the auto start, it might be the battery optimization permission, and number of permission, or the special, like anything, like any kind of permission, because all of those layered Android devices, they have their own set of tools and own set of security centers. You actually have to open them, because let's say if some OS is not allowing you to start the app in AutoStart, and though you are having the Android AutoStart permission, it's of no use. So like this link is very helpful. Next. Yeah, heat is bad. Yeah, here like in Boston, so like this is my first time in the US, and it's pretty cold, and now I'm getting used to it. And in the summer also, like I'm feeling, oh, it's winter. Because we are not used to it. But in India, like there is a lot of heat. Like the room temperature is pretty high, and the devices get heat up. So what happens is they will end up becoming slow. So you have to take care from the user's point of view. Like let's say if it's possible to do the actual one-to-one user surveys, then you can ask the users, you can meet the users. Let's say like one of the application MDM, that's mobile device management, that we are working on is tracking our salesperson. So we actually had to discuss with the salesperson, because like salesperson were roaming around in the heat, and they were traveling via bike. Then due to the heat, their mobile used to get like more heated, and plus our application were running background continuously. So again, studying the user matters. Avoid the loops. Again, all of the the practical data structures and algorithm like that we can use. Floating point calculation, like better to keep in integer, and remove all the floating point calculations. Less animation. Yeah, I will not name the libraries. There are amazing and super animation libraries. Again, just imagine you have put 1 month with your developer and your Adobe After Effects designer just to get a single animation of 15 seconds. And let's say if it gets installed to the user's device, it is getting crashed or it's getting lagged. It's not good. So it's better to avoid. It's better to use less animations as possible. And again, data structures and algorithm. If you use the efficient data structures, especially for the mobile development, and if you do it in a scale, you will definitely see the improvement in the time. Run on UI thread. Yeah, those who are familiar with the like Java and the Android coding, like this is very good. So even I used to just write the raw code. I used to go to Stack Overflow, copy the code, paste it over there, and then again run it every time if the app opens. But the problem with this is, even if you kill the app from the background, and if you open the app again, from the scratch, the thread will keep running. Thread will not get closed. So it's better to close the threads manually. Just run on UI thread. It's just an example. But whatever threads or that you will be using manually. Fall in love with Kotlin. Yeah. In 3 weeks ago, I just had an interview I will not just name the company, in the Boston, who are still using the Java, and the company is amazing. They are working on really good product, but still they are using the Java just for the fear, oh, what if we don't get that support? What if we don't get that kind of structure? But believe me, you do not have to migrate your entire code base at once, but I highly recommend you to start at least migrating the modules. As the code is interoperable, you can work with the Java anytime you want. But let's say if you want to decide the new functionalities in the app, it's better to use Kotlin. No null point exceptions. Next. Yeah. Again, preparing for the internet failures. Everyone knows the game in that Chrome, and so again, you can gamify some part of your applications. Again, they hate rotating circles. So previously it was async task. Later they migrated to Kotlin. But the problem is it's better to get it done simultaneously in the background service, so that you will have something. User will not get stuck. And let's say in India, we don't know where the user is and what's the bandwidth of the user. In developing economies, user may cut off with the internet. I have seen the apps of popular brands getting crashed into the trains or getting crashed into the forest because there is no network, in spite of using all of those standards. So you really have to for example, let's say even writing simple download manager, it's better to test with the Android profiler. So in the last workshop, Sagar has really showed the best demo of the Android profiler. That's a really great tool that you can actually use to measure the performance, network, and everything. And yeah, Firebase real-time database. I'm very big fan of it. I'm not getting biased, but again, this is very important because again, it's on device also, and it will get synced with the cloud in real time. Use of SMS. So again, internet is kind of optional thing you can consider, but what you can do is, we used to have some kind of features which were SMS based. For example, having worked on the security application, let's say if your mobile gets stolen, And if your mobile doesn't have the internet connection, what you're gonna do? So what, like we had a functionality where like we have specified this number. If the device gets the SMS from that number, the device will get formatted. So whoever the thief is, whoever the person who has stolen the device, that person will not have any kind of access. Why we had to do with the SMS because internet is not guaranteed. Again, like fall in love with the Kotlin. So like there are a lot of things because like the code base reduces. You will see the like decrease in the memory and the RAM management is really good. And yeah, so focus on offline feature that I just explained. Next. Yeah, so the basically thing is like whenever you are, let's say, like I hope like everyone is doing lead code and like most of the here are students, or let's say if you are giving interviews in the other companies. So what I even like, I'm not the best coder in the like in the lead, even I don't know, even sometimes I get stuck in the basic problems. But what I used to do is, let's say if I'm learning hash map, then how I can use the hash map in the Android. Let's say how I can replace the, let's say the redundancy, how can I remove this with the data structure, just for the practice. So like if you keep doing that, because like when I interacted with a lot of the people, they are not able to crack the interviews, they are not able to crack the technical interviews. So if you keep applying the knowledge on your level in the application or in your domain, it will definitely help you to build the logic. And this is the kind of secret of building the efficient applications, because like again, like here we have 8 gigabytes, 12 gigabytes of RAM and Snapdragon like 900,000 to like I don't know the best version of the processor, but there you have to take care of the efficiency. And yeah, so mobile development motivation in the layoff market, that's also the point that I want to highlight is, again, like the market is bad, everyone is accepting, like it's okay. But what I see is whatever I am building, whatever I am working on, are there people which are using that technology? Let's say if I see, yeah, there are people, I'm working on Android, doesn't matter if I have a job or not, but I always have something side project going on. This is especially for students. Doesn't matter if you are making money from that project or not, doesn't matter if you are getting job or not, doesn't matter like if you are getting paid. What matters is if you like that technology and if there is a user base, you should go for it. So like, you should be relaxed, like, okay, there are people who using it, so I don't have to worry about it. Like someone will hire me today or tomorrow, or I can start freelancing or whatever it is. So next. Yeah, so again, you cannot make a person better without the best leader. So I'm just kind of a face value over here. So like I'm not the single person actually. So like again, thanks to all of my leaders, my mom and dad, my even the musical guru, my Android guru, my ex co-founders, my friends, and like the grateful leaders I had, because of them I used to experiment a lot. And here also like I got a chance to meet a lot of amazing people over here, like in the GDG Boston, or even a lot of Google developer experts. They are very supportive. I'm very thankful to all of them, and thanks a lot to you. So before moving forward, so Nishtha, I would like to know, like, have you worked on the Android TV?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so the main problem with the Android TV is it's not just like get the code and whatever that I've told on the mobile, it cannot be applicable on the TV. So like we had a conversation with Nishta. Okay, so why not to have the presentation about the TV? Because right now what the Geo is doing, or the telecom industry is doing in India, they are actually the TV growth is exponentially increasing, and like I would love to shed a light on that. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Amay. So, as Amay said, that I have worked on Android TV applications for one of the biggest telecom companies in India, Reliance Jio. And so they have started actually developing apps for their set-top box. And it was a really great opportunity for me to go ahead and develop apps for them. So let's move forward. So something about me is like I'm currently a grad student at Northeastern, and I have been a developer for 1.5 years past. And I have developed for both mobile and TV, and also a beginner level expertise in Flutter. Apart from technical things, I really love gaming, reading, and I socialize a lot with my friends. Now, a bit of introduction to Android TV. So I would say GIF, what you see over there, it's like if for Android TV, when we develop, it is similar to that. So as soon as I give the app to my developers, my testers, they come back with me. They come back to me with all of the bugs that they have, and those bugs are normally with respect to different TV sizes. Like we have very different TV sizes. So with respect to that, there are lots of issues. And then let's go to Android X TV libraries. So these are a set of libraries and APIs specifically designed to simplify Android TV development. And they are a part of Android Jetpack suite, which provides us, the developers, with a set of tools and components for building high quality Android applications. And then lean back UI paradigm. This is a user interface design approach developed by Google for TV and other high screen devices. It is based on the principle of simplicity and intuitive navigation for a more engaging and enjoyable user experience. So now let's take a deep dive into some of the topics related to Android TV development. One of them is the leanback library. So it consists of a range of UI components designed specifically for the TV apps. Some of the components are browser fragment, header fragment, and details fragment. So the image which you see below the leanback library, the red part of that image is the browser fragment, which basically gives you all the headers, and with respect to each of the headers, you can see the detail fragment on the right part. And we can build consistent and intuitive user interfaces that provide seamless navigation and content discovery experiences. I personally face a lot of issues with the library while I first started developing for the TV apps. And this was mainly because for mobile development, it is very easier and you have lots of resources. But when I started, it was very hard for me to get like a bunch of resources for this. So I hope in the near future, everyone does not feel the same. Maybe I can help with that as well. And next, we have some TV specific UI considerations. So these are some of the considerations what we normally take with respect to TV would be legibility and larger text sizes. So that because in TV we actually read from a very far distance, right? So that is one of the main things that a developer should keep in mind. Then we have focus indicators and appropriate UI elements. Then we need to prioritize legibility, clear focus indicators, and some TV specific input handling. So even when a user is entering something for searching, so proper indicators for input should be given, and the app should look really well, and it should perform well on TV screens. Now let's go to TV navigation. So for that, it can be more complex than traditional mobile navigation due to the unique input mechanisms and focus-based interactions. Now, designing effective TV navigation requires careful attention to the focus management, focus traversal, user actions, and accessibility considerations. So by creating the intuitive and user-friendly navigation experiences, the TV application experience for any user would be very good. And then let's move on to testing and debugging. The proper testing strategies include device compatibility testing, automated testing, attention to UI consistency, and addressing TV-specific issues. So that the developers can actually create robust and user-friendly TV apps. Now, supporting multi-screen sizes by considering some of the factors like layout, responsiveness, grid-based design, focus and navigation, text size, and legibility and quality assurance. So we need to pay a lot of attention to the corner cases for edge alignment and many different things. So as you can see, the smart TV on the on the left side and the Android TVs on the right side, there are differences in the UI. And this is because some of the apps and the whole of the OSs are a bit similar, but developers always think that all their applications and layouts should be very different. So we kind of try to make it as easier and as beautiful as possible, but sometimes we cannot do that as well because of many reasons. Next, we go on to the deep dive into some of the other widgets and lean-back libraries which we have. So some of them are lean-back widgets. Now, these libraries include a set of UI widgets which are designed for TV apps. It offers specific versions of common Android widgets like the image, card view, or the list view, what you see, and guided step fragment. So guided step fragment is something like if you have a settings page. Now, if you choose one of the options, next you want to go into the next step of that particular option. And so we have a guided step fragment, which is similar to what we have in Android mobile application as well. Now, next, lean-back preferences. This library offers an extension to the Android X preference library, specifically tailored for TV apps, and it provides TV-friendly preferences and setting screens optimized for the lean-back user interface. And these normally use the remote and the D-pad for navigation as we use for the TVs. And then we have the lean-back transition. This library provides support for shared element transition in the TV app. And it allows smooth and visually pleasing transitions between different screens and elements within the app, enhancing the overall user experience for a user. Now, the lean-back player library, it actually offers player interfaces. Sorry. It facilitates the video playback in Android TV, and it offers a player interface and classes for managing video playback, and including support for the adaptive streaming, media controls, and the playback customization. The lean-back player library integrates well with other lean-back components, providing a seamless video playback experience for a user. And I think I'm done with the presentation. Thanks a lot, all of you. Does anyone have any questions for us?
I have a question for Amar. So I think in the initial slides you talked about like custom ROM.
Yeah.
Now, when I was in college, and that was back in like 2012 and 2013, India was like huge into custom ROMs. And I feel
Right.
like partly because the vanilla flavor of Android was not, thank you.
Okay, I think I need to also.
Yeah, it was not there yet.
Yeah.
How about now? Like, do you feel like, I don't remember the name of those custom ROMs. I feel like it was called Lineage OS or something. Is there still a popularity back in India or in other European countries? Or do you feel like vanilla Android has achieved all of those shortcomings like battery optimizations and whatnot?
Yeah, just wait. Let me plug in the speaker. Yeah, that is really good question. So right now, what is happening with the by the way, I have tested more than 100 plus devices and 500 plus custom ROMs. So like, just name the ROM. It's like been there, done that. Right now, like definitely, it was like necessity is the mother of invention. That is the phrase that we have used. So definitely the market was huge then, and right now also it's getting like way much better. So like the ROM that you have just told, it's Lineage OS, which is originated from the Cyanogen mod. And like for that, you need to unlock the blue bootloader of the device. And yeah, can you just repeat the last part of the question?
Yeah, I was wondering, like, do you think vanilla Android has achieved all of those shortcomings like battery optimizations and everything? Because I remember, like, in particular, Cyanogen mod used to provide tons of like kernel level improvements which improved battery life of the devices.
Yeah. So let's say it depends on the use case to use case. So let's say if I'm a normal user and I don't want to do and if I'm having a fairly new device, I don't need to use the custom ROM technically. But let's say if I'm using some kind of layered OS, I will not name those OS. And again, that they are eating a lot my battery life, and they are eating like making my phone slow. They are making me install some malware, spyware, or like let's say adware, a lot of ads. So definitely in that case, because like the right now the ROMs are they gone beyond the performance. Performance is okay. Like we are at least I think like we are over there. We are getting good performance on the vanilla, but what about the let's say if I buy the phone of brand X and if I let's say use it for 2 years, it's gonna be get laggy. It's gonna be damn slow, and it doesn't happen with the vanilla. In vanilla, like definitely Google is doing like great job like by providing the updates and all, because like I have like 6 7 years old earphone and like I'm running the Android 13 on that custom ROM vanilla OS. But let's say if I decide to switch to the layered original manufacturer ROM, that is like in Android, they're giving me Android 11 or something like that, and that's also like a lot of bloatware. So definitely, when the custom ROM battle will end is when the layered Android, like the performance of the layered Android ROMs and the customizations that we get with the vanilla Android ROM will match. So because let's say if you buy the stock devices, then definitely the price point is very high. And let's say if I buy the same device in the same price point, I get the higher specs as compared to Google and all. So if we combine both, like vanilla and plus high end hardware, then the problem is going to get solved. Otherwise, like I don't think there will be the death of the custom ROMs, or don't think there will be the stoppage on the development of the custom ROMs.
Yeah, makes sense.
Hey Amay, thank you so much for the session. But yeah, when you said that like necessity is the mother of all invention, I remember the Indian word for that, jugaad. Like which,
Yeah.
yeah, like you reminded me of the days when I used to like set up the custom rooms, etc. But yeah, that's like the long story. So like I have two questions. First of all, like as we have tried like several custom OS, like I have tried like many different OS, like especially on the Android devices, which I have been like using so far. But could you like throw some light on the phone breaking? That's like the main
Yeah.
issues which I have been facing. I used to face it earlier. Like nowadays,
Yeah.
I'm not into phone breaking. But like, is there any way when we are trying custom ROMs, if we could detect any kind of phone breaking related issues, and how we could null and void that?
Yeah, that is really good question, Nikunj. I'm glad you asked. And yeah, let's say if anyone wants to have like anyone from Google or like other companies, if they want to have a session on custom ROM, like we can have a complete, it's like 4 weeks workshop on the custom ROMs, where like I can show you like regarding breaking, how to unbreak, how not to break, and everything else. But to answer this question, first of all, like, do you know what does the breaking means? I just want to get the idea of the audience. So do you know about the breaking? What does the breaking means? Okay. So the brick means, yeah. So there are two types of brick. I will not go deep into the technical. Earlier used to happen is like your phone is brick. That means you will actually see the pictures of the bricks in the phone, and you will not be able to do anything with the phone. You will not be able to power it on, or you will not be able to navigate. So that's, or right now what is happening is like if your phone gets into the boot loop mode, then it's called as breaking. So to avoid that, I would highly recommend you to, so when you unlock the bootloader, after unlocking the bootloader, if you are inserting the firmware, make sure you always have the updated firmware. If you have the outdated firmware and then you install the updated ROM, then definitely it's going to break your devices. But fortunately, the trends in the recent devices are, I have seen this soft, like most of the devices get soft break. So like if you go to service center, then they can actually easily unbreak it, or you can unbreak it on your own by installing that uh, normal the default ROM. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Whew, I could definitely feel my gears turning, like Android TV and custom ROM. Good job, guys. All right. Our next speaker has driven all the way from the city that never sleeps. Please welcome Mohit on the stage.
Oh, I'll use that.
It's all good. It's still live. Should be fine. Thank you.
Oh, wait. So, yeah. You can present. There we go. Join event. Perfect. Okay, and do you see? Can you click on stages? Yeah, Boston Common. Perfect. There should be an option for presenting. I don't see it. Let me hold on. Give me a second.
So this is
Yeah, he's already on like Boston Common.
right.
Yeah.
So I can't join the virtual because of my ticket. Let's get Linda.
Should I call Roman?
I think Linda is online. Here it is.
Yeah, because he already was in Boston Common. What is this?
I think we have to go to the main page. I'm not really sure.
The main event page?
So GDG.
Oh, there's Lucas. Probably I can grab Lucas.
I want the community site, the main community site.
Community tab. Yeah.
I didn't do the demo. So you should be here now. And then,
He needs to be made as host, maybe.
No. No. So, are we? This is the general shot. I did a DM with her. No, I don't want a private room. See, I'm not quite sure how. Oh, I'm not quite sure how to enable the backstage link. So she's online here.
I think he needs to be made as a host. I don't see a host video here. No.
We need to call her. And now I'm blanking on her phone number.
Do you have? Are you carrying your MacBook? Are you carrying your MacBook? What if we just take
Yeah,
the
I
slides
have
and
my-
you
my
can
MacBook.
present?
I won't. I have the same problem with the backstage link. So I think I have her number here to call her. I was on with her in the mortar.
It says that he's an attendee. Did you click the backstage link, Mohan? Yeah, he's on backstage. Yeah, and he has also joined Boston Common.
Alright, and
If not, let's get this show running.
yeah.
Yes. Today's agenda. Please join the backstage and see.
Is this the link that's the link that I sent you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
5501. Yep. That's one.
I'm gonna send it to you on Twitter one more time just to be complicated. It's so freaking weird. So, wait, I lost you. Oh, sorry. I didn't lose you. You're here. So now I sent it again.
Okay. This is the backstage.
So
Live.
backstage live. We wanna. It's recording backstage live. You are now a presenter.
Okay.
All right. Now we're good.
Yeah. Loud.
So how do I get digital?
And then
Share screen.
Yes. Share screen. There we go. Do you see your slides over there? Okay, perfect. Apologies for the delay, guys. We were figuring out few of the technical difficulties, but now we are good to go.
Oh wait, so here
You can do probably keynote, yeah. Perfect. And make your keynote full screen. on play mode. Nice. All set.
Hello? 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 Hi. My presentation is on building multi-platform apps with Compose. My name is Mohit. I'm at GDG in Kotlin and Android. First, thank you for the opportunity to present in Boston. So what I'm going to present on is how do you use Compose multi-platform? Like, how do you structure a project? What are some examples of sharing like a UI between multiple platforms, and how do you go about doing that? I'll share like on iOS, like how do you like use a shared Compose UI view like on iOS? And what's inside a Swift UI, like how do you hook it in? And I'll talk lastly about architecture and navigation. So before I start, I want to ask how many people use Compose? 4 people. How many people use Flutter? We got 1 people.
The stream is not still coming. Can you just verify?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, I'm interrupting. Is this escape key? How about entire screen if you do? How about try entire screen? I think for some reason. It's not coming up. Is there another existing prompt? Let's do entire screen.
Oh, there you go. All right, that's technical difficulties are good because they make you get used to it. So, yeah, how many people are Android developers? That's great. Everyone here is in Android. How many people use Kotlin multi-platform? That's not surprising. So Kotlin multi-platform is a library for those of you who haven't used it that allows you to allows you to share code between multiple platforms. So when you work for a company, there's usually a team of people, of iOS engineers, Android engineers, building features in their respective platforms. But what you want to avoid is duplication of logic. And Kotlin multi-platform allows you to share like your business logic among these different platforms. So when you look at different platforms, what are the things that you could share? You could share like your code that interacts with the API, your repository and data layer. You could share your caching layer, and in the ecosystem, there are many different libraries like Ktor and SQLite that allow you to easily write shareable data layer code. So you could share your business logic, like calculations you're doing, and now you're able to share UI components. You could write UI components in the shared library, and it's going to be then you could use it on Android and iOS, and that's what I want to show you. So this is the library. It was announced at KotlinConf. At KotlinConf, they announced alpha support for iOS. And at Compose, this is JetBrains Compose multi-platform library. For Android support, it internally uses Jetpack Compose. And I'll share with you what does it use for iOS to get it working on iOS, to render on iOS. So one caveat is that this is experimental, so anything, there will be a lot of open questions, but that's good because that's how we progress forward. So there are different approaches you could take that I thought of. One approach is that you could share individual UI components, not your whole UI. You could share what you find to be valuable. But that in itself also, opens up a lot of questions. What about theming? What about maybe you're trying to share something that's part of your design system? How do you go about organizing your code, etc.? So on Android and iOS, suppose you had multiple UI components and written in Kotlin and Swift, and you could share them in Kotlin in this shared library. Another approach you could take, which is you'll see in their repo an examples of both of these approaches. There's one example where everything is written, the whole app is written in Kotlin. The UI is all written in Compose. That in itself is also, it raises a lot of questions because that also, I will share with you the questions it raises. So what I did is good to learn about new tech by building personal projects. So one of the projects I worked on personally was to learn Swift UI. I built a simple app that displays a list of images and just displays some details. And the purpose of it was to learn Swift UI, and what I worked on was converting this to Compose multi-platform. So first thing I thought about is how do you go about structuring your UI? So when you look at Android examples, they will structure the UI by having like a root composable method, and then everything else, and then it calls like other screens. How do you do that? So when you create a Kotlin multi-platform project, you have multiple apps in there. You got an Android app, iOS app, desktop app, and then you have a shared library. And the shared is a great module. It creates an artifact that you could consume on Android app, a jar file. An iOS app, it's a Objective-C framework that you could consume, and they add annotations to make the code more friendlier on when you consume it in Swift. And that's good. So, all right, thank you. So that was good. That was another tech problem. Where was I? I was, so you have, in the share folder, you have different source sets where you could add code to, your common code, but you could also add specific bindings for Android and iOS. So first thing you want to do is that they provide a plugin, which really provides some helper utilities that makes it easier to configure things. And they provide to you this common libraries that you could add. So they have a material, for example, artifact. So they have material support for multiple platforms. So first thing that you want to do to be able to build a scaffolding that your Android and iOS app would use, for example, a root app root view, like a root composable function, is you could declare that in your common source set. And this is a composable function. For those of you who don't use Compose, this is, think of it, so all of your UI components, they're composable functions. You could think of them as the atoms of building a UI in Compose. And so there's a library called Compose UI, which provides you with task lists, a way to do that. But Compose itself is not just about UI. It's a library that knows how to manage a tree of nodes, for example. And you could extend that in the UI space for UI or for other examples. So this is a composable function, and I'm annotating with composable. And over here, I'm going to specify a scaffolding for my app where the content will go and where the top bar and items are going to go. So this right here, I put this in the common shared module that I'm going to utilize from Android and iOS. And I could also share an app theme. So when you create the sample project like on Android, this is in your Android app, so you can move that over to your common module, your common source set. So I have my color palette, and I have a wrapper for my theme. in which I'm selecting either a dark mode or light mode. So material theme is supported. As you saw, there was the dependency we brought in. So on Android, what I'm going to do is specify an image app theme like this, wrap my root view. So I'm going to utilize this in my Android app. And then in my Android app, I could call set content and utilize this method, main Android. So in my iOS app is where things get interesting. And this is Swift code. And this is a struct. And in here, I'm specifying a body. And then I'm going to create a content view, which is going to be another struct. And in there is where I'm going to utilize my, that app root view, the compose UI view that I specified in my shareable code. When you look at this content view, you see a Z stack, which is similar to like a lazy vertical list, like in Compose. And over here, I could just attach, add in my Compose view for it, and it provides utilities. The JetBrains Compose multi-platform library provides utilities to create a UI view controller. So, in this land, you have to create, view controllers, and that's what I understand. So, over here, the benefit of doing this is that in this layout, I could have other things in there. I could have other styling that I could specify on the Z stack. And that's one benefit to be able to add in right there in an existing Swift UI, like a view from your shared library. So that's what I'm going to do, is that I'm going to add in this list view with all the images from my shared components library. So what I'm going to create here is a struct, which is going to create a UI view controller. And the method that I'm calling here is main underscore iOS KT dot. And you could make that a friendlier name, but what that does is that it creates a UI view controller. And the way it works is that it uses this utility that the multi-platform library provides from JetBrains called Compose UI View Controller. And over here, I'm passing it in what my shared view is, which is the one that I created called Images App Common. So underneath the hood, that's going to set up he's going to create a UI view controller that's able to interact with that content. And I'm going to just add it in. So the question now becomes, if you in Xcode open this up, you go to the view, you want to look at the view hierarchy. How does it look? And out of curiosity. So the view hierarchy looks something like this. The multi-platform library handles creating window management for iOS, Android, and for desktop. And the key thing to here is that when you look at the last view that it attached, in the view hierarchy is called the Seco UI view. But what's the Seco UI view? So Seco UI view, Seco is a library. And what it is that it's a Kotlin multi-platform binding for Skia. So Skia is a rendering library, and it knows how to draw primitive shapes like lines, circles. So if I create a compose view, and for example, it's a lazy list, it will figure out how to render that. And underneath the hood, it uses this library, which are bindings to be able to figure out how to render your screen. And that's what the Skia UI view does. So that's important to know there. And so that's a very simple example of utilizing a Kotlin compose view on iOS. So the other part that I want to now talk about is that's the easy part. But then when I was building this library, I thought about how do I display these images, and which is a very common, easy challenge. We all work on apps that have media, visual things. And in the Android world, there are a couple of libraries that are available that all of us use, Coil, Picasso, Glide. And one challenge is that none of these libraries have Kotlin multi-platform support. But there are also libraries that people don't know about that have a lot of stars, but But the main, main players, they don't have Kotlin multi-platform support. But in Coil, there is an issue open, and there is in the next milestone, Coil 3, where they're looking to add Kotlin multi-platform support. And that makes it easy. And there is a plan possibly of integrating this inside of the JetBrains Kotlin multi-platform library. So this is good news. So one of the things I thought about is that in my app, I want to display a list of resources locally. How do I do that? And the examples provide a good example of this. So the Compose multi-platform library provides utilities for interacting with resources, local resources. And what I created is an image provider that provides a bitmap based on URL. Now, in reality, in production, you wouldn't want to do this, obviously. But what I want to provide is an example of how to use actual and expect declarations in Compose. It's a good example of that. So how do you do this? So over here, I'm utilizing that utility called resources, takes in a URL, and I need to convert these bytes into a bitmap. How do I do that? In order to do that, they're different. And iOS is different, on Android is different. So to implement this extension, I could use expect and actual declarations, and that's where the power comes in with multi-platform. Is that in common main, I could specify an expect declaration like this. I'm not adding in the implementation here. I'm going to say, I'm kind of building a contract that you have to specify the implementation for this for Android and iOS, the implementation of this method. And when I go to Android main, I'm going to do actual fun. So the keyword is actual when you're actually providing an implementation. And then I'm going to call in this method, the extension called toAndroid bitmap, and bitmap factory is an Android dependency that I'm utilizing here. So what about iOS? So on iOS, I could use Skia utilities that are provided by this library. So on iOS, I'm going to do actual fun, and I'm going to add this to the iOS source set. And I'm going to do image make from encoded to compose image bitmap. So these are utilities that this library provides, native utilities that you could utilize. So what I have done there is it provided an implementation using expect and actual for Android and iOS. And that my provider could now recognize and call the method. That does look ugly, but ugly is good when you're starting off. So how do you call that method? And there's another ugly way to do that. So over here, I'm creating a composable function to create my images list, passing in images. Let's not worry about whether that's stable or not. So so over here, I'm creating a column of a lazy vertical grid 3. And I'm then I'm going to call the splash image method with image data. How is that implemented? Well, I'm going to use a locale provider. One should be very careful of that because you don't want to use that for DI. And but that's okay. So over here, I'm pulling the image provider here, and this is just an example. So over here, I'm creating this image bitmap mutable state. And I won't go into remember, but remember means something if you in Compose, very important. And then I'm going to do a side effect to say that, hey, image provider, get me an image bitmap. Here's a URL for it. It gives me an image bitmap, and then I'm just going to give it to the image composable to render it. And that's just a simple example of being able to you could use expect and actual also with composable functions. That's also one thing to note. That's powerful. So the other thing to note here, so I could build this app and I could share the root view, the images list view, and the images details view. And the other thing becomes, how do you do UI architecture and navigation in between these screens? So there are different types of architectures everyone uses. Some people use MVVM or MVP. So suppose I want to set up the classical view model architecture. A view model talks to the composed UI. You pass in some UI state, and it passes events up to the view model. Well, how do you implement this? It's easy to implement this on Android because they provide you with lifecycle, aware components. But then it becomes a challenge on Android. You could attempt to create your view models, but that also opens up questions because they're not going to be lifecycle aware. You're going to have to make them lifecycle aware somehow. That's foreshadowing, hint, hint. So how do you do that? So I'm going to attempt to share, create a view model the nastiest way possible. I'm going to create a view model in the common source set. To create a view model, you need a UI state. You got a loading state, a success state, and an error state, right? Pretty simple. We could debate whether this should be a sealed interface, but I like debates. And so we could create a view model. We're going to create a view model and do the worst thing possible, create a scope. Why is that the worst thing possible? Because you're going to have to manage canceling that. You're going to have to manage that yourself. And there is a very important concept of structured concurrency that you want to uphold, you want to follow, to write reliable tests. That's why it's not good. So then I'm going to create a state flow with a default loading state. And then in that method, I'm going to launch a coroutine. And what I liked about this slide was that animation. So what I'm going to do is launch a coroutine, and I'm going to tell the repo, give me the images list, and I'm going to push it to the success state and error state. It looks pretty simple. This handles the simplest case, but then it doesn't handle all the things that the Android view model provides you. You're going to have to write that and hook up that yourself. And that's a challenge. And who wants to do that? I don't want to do that. So you could utilize this by collect that state from your view model and give it to your images list screen, and then pass in your UI state. So the other thing you could do is that you could create a list screen. And as you know, the patterns use that each screen has a composable function that takes the UI state, and you have either a loading state, an error state, or a success state. And now the question becomes, when you have all of this, how do you navigate? How do you navigate from lists? And how do you navigate from details? If you're not using the navigation library that Android provides, and that's also a problem. And that also requires for you to build some scaffolding around that. So you could build a screens object as a common pattern with lists, with details, and then I could create a mutable state. What screen list I want to navigate to. Suppose the person clicks on an item, list item, I'm going to update this state, and I'm going to have a when that basically shows the different items, pushes the different items in the content. So I'm going to have a list, I'm going to have a details, and whenever someone clicks on a list item, on click, it just fires the event upward, and then I'm going to do some action, update that state. Things that all of you know. So this is everything inside of that shared library that I have. So the problem is that these are not lifecycle aware components, and navigation is not simple, because this is simple, but a real navigation library has to manage backstack, and that gets interesting when you're doing it by yourself. And so there is a library. One option you could use. There's a library called Decompose, which is a popular library, and I'm going to show you how it attempts to solve that problem by providing an abstraction and handling the scaffolding or all the logic of managing the backstack for you, and it attempts to provide you with lifecycle aware components. So how would you utilize this? So, and by the way, in the examples, they also utilize this in one of their examples, this library. It's a good library. So how do you utilize this? Well, this has a concept of a list component. What is a list component? It's the same thing as like a view model, and it has some arbitrary state, UI state that you could plug in, and then you have a class that you could specify. I'm specifying my UI state class as I did before. And when an image is clicked, I'm specifying some actions, what actions I want to take on that component. So the way you do this is that you create a concrete implementation of that list component where I'm passing in a component context, and I'm overriding what my UI state will be. And then also providing basically an action in there. And the way you utilize this in images list, and by the way, this underneath the hood handles the coroutine support for it. And that's good. It has support for multiple coroutine libraries. There's one with, I think it's called reactive, something like that, or with a K. And so I'm trying to create an images list component right here, get the UI state, and then I could populate it using my one statement that I showed you before. So how do you handle navigation with this from one component to another? So you declare a root component, and over here is where you declare your stack. What's going to be in your stack? Some child, all of the child screens. Then you do creating a seal class for each of them here, list and my details. So when I navigate, in Android, when you look at the examples, everyone creates a app navigator, right? And what's the equivalent of that? So I'm going to, over here, initialize a stack and specify what's going to be the initial screen in that stack, and what's going to be initially shown. And I can use this navigator right there, navigation class to go from list to details. I could pass in a configuration to one to another. So if I wanted to navigate, for example, from my list component to my details, I could do navigation.push, and it also has support for animations. And I could pass in information one to the other. And it handles the backstack management for you, which is nice. So this, and if I also wanted to navigate back, I could just do pop. And all my navigation is in this default root component. So that's how you handle navigation. It's a very good library that you should try out. And those are lifecycle aware components. And this works on iOS because it's multi-platform. So the other thing is that in my images app common, before I was creating over here I'm creating a list content, a details content for each of my different screens. And on Android, the way you utilize this is to create a default root component. So this has bindings for Android, and then I'm just going to pass that into my images app root layer, images app common composable method. On iOS, you could update your app delegate, which is equivalent to an application like class in Android, and create a root holder. And then you could pass in that root holder to your compose view. So it knows how to create that, that root view, the navigator from this. So that's a simple way of setting up navigation. So Decompose is a great library that handles lifecycle aware components. It handles like destroying them, and handles cleaning up and backstack management. So I hope that presentation was useful for you in trying this out. We hope you try it out yourself on your projects. And that's about it. Thank you. Anyone have any questions? I have some questions.
In your experience, have you found any drawbacks with multi-platform yet?
So one time I worked on a project where I attempted to build a library, and it was an A/B testing library that has a common API, right? And it was supposed to be used both on Androids and iOS. So the Android repo is in a separate repo. It's a separate setup. And there are a lot of questions that arose. One is that first is what's going to be the API? How is going to be friendly, Swift idiomatic, right? And that becomes a challenge. And you know, there are people, a lot of people have given talks on how to build idiomatic APIs. And the other question becomes is that when this shared library is in a separate repo, it produces an artifact, which is an Objective-C framework. How will the iOS app consume it? So the iOS app, for example, was using CocoaPods. And how is that going to handle? So there are utilities that are given, but how do you then, you have to then set up this pipeline where that's got to go to Artifactory, for example, or some shared service, and has to pull basically from it continuously whenever it updates. Setting up that scaffolding, you know, was also a challenge. It's part of the work, right? Of building a multi-platform library, building also the tooling around it, you know, and so those are some of the challenges.
Thank you. Great presentation, by the way. So I do Flutter, and we know how, let's say, a framework like Flutter achieves cohesive UIs across multiple platforms thanks to Skia, right? And because you mentioned that Compose multi-platform uses Skia underneath the hood using Skiko, that's what you call it. So, and we know, for example, like the shader compilation jank issues that we have on iOS. Have those been solved in Compose? Are those issues also there? Because we know how Flutter also is now ditching Skia for even their own rendering engine underneath it using Impeller. Or is it like a Compose multi-platform just moving little by little, adopting Skia maybe in the future might also do something, go the route of Flutter?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer, but I I think that, so the issue you brought up, I don't think that's resolved. I think it's just starting out. So it's in its alpha version. But for my next talk, I will definitely have slides on that.
I'm just curious, is this an attempt to create something similar to React Native?
Oh man, that's deep. So that's so no. No. I want to answer that in a positive way. I want to answer that in a concise way. So there is a possibility you could go down the route where you could build your whole UI. I don't really recommend that. So in this space, there are different ways to go about doing this. You could build a Flutter app, right? Some companies go about just changing their UI to Flutter app, and they also lose developers. But there, and then you have another option, you know, which is that, well, so there's a library called Redwood that you could use, which is different than building. It's not about, you know, React Native. It's about, that's good if you have a use case where you have a UI-driven, you have a design system defined, and that's one way to do it. I could go into so much details about that. There's another way to do it, which is you have your Android UI code, and then you got your iOS UI code. For now, I'm just going to use Kotlin multi-platform for just shared business logic. And this has been released on iOS for alpha, and it raises questions, which is, I don't have all the answer, which is, what UI component are you going to share? Or do you need to share it for your business needs? You know, everything should be about business needs rather than engineering. So what problem are you solving? That all starts with that, right? When I said the second choice I said, which is with Redwood, for example, that started from a business decision. That started to solve a problem, an actual real problem. So, yeah, that's it. I'm gonna go off my soapbox.
All right, that was Mohit, and Android GDE. Well, like we saw in first session when Lucas was talking about a gist of Google I/O, and it was about AI, AI, AI. Well, in the world of Android, it's compose, 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 and compose. My friend Russell over there must have enjoyed his talk. He's all about multi-platform. All right, so in first session, we learned about large screen devices. Now, what if we compress them to something tiny and fit it on our wrist? Let's welcome the next speaker on the stage, the amazing GDE Sierra. And she's going to talk about Android Wear OS.
I'm not. Do I share my slides?
Yeah.
Man, this is the hardest part. I should have worn a different tab. I'll probably just use the podium mic. That's fine.
Okay, sounds good.
Is this okay? Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll just hold it. Not the right shirt for this. I need to
Click on share screen.
Okay. Oh, and then do I put this in?
Oh, yeah.
I need him up there too. It knows it. Okay.
All the best.
Somewhere it has to. Okay, yeah.
Probably you can just mirror it. No?
It's not mirrored, no.
I can turn on mirroring. We can just do that. It's fine. I just can't see the time if I do that. Come on, man.
Oh, I can help you with time. Like, at what time do you want to
Oh,
give this
do that.
hands?
Oh, it's at the bottom. Okay. Where is it? What sign is this on? Sign else. Oh, there it is. Okay. We'll do it. Yeah. All right. Oh, no, I can't get my mouse back. Okay, great. We're going to go without speaker slides because I can't get my mouse back. All right.
I'm sad I had to go after Mohit because his presentation was really cool, and I was really excited about that, and I've wanted to see that presentation for a while, so I'm very glad I got to see it here. I'm Sierra O'Brien, and today we're going to talk about some different parts of Wear OS. A fun fact about me is I don't like wearing watches, let alone smartwatches, and so this probably feels like a really poor choice in topic for me that I continue to talk about at every conference I can get into. And that's because I'm really excited about the potential of finding a reason to wear a watch. I have an Apple Watch, I have a Google Watch, I have a variety of regular watches. But I think my Apple Watch has been dead probably since sometime last year. My Pixel Watch I get locked out of every time I need to turn it on for something because I never use it except to test for these sorts of things. And all of my other watches also have dead batteries. So again, an interesting topic, but you're stuck here listening to my exploration on Wear OS. So today we're going to talk about some of the ways we can use health services and Wear OS to build better app experiences. They told me I should talk about Google I/O because we were at Google I/O Extended. So let's talk about the different things that were announced and talked about with Wear OS at Google I/O. So what did we talk about? One, we talked about notifications. Too long didn't read here is that notifications on Wear OS and Android are really, really similar. The only thing that we really care about is that you might have bridge notification, which is going to be on all of your devices, or local, which again are just specific to the Wear device. And if you're going down that bridge path, you just want to make sure it's a really good user experience across all those devices, and they're not having to dismiss those across different devices in their ecosystem. We talked about watch faces. They have a new watch face format that's no code, and so your designers might be able to design their own watch faces, although it is XML, so I don't know if they're really going to want to. But they do have a nice watch face drag and drop, kind of like the editor inside Android Studio, and so that's another way to do it. They talked about Google Assistant. You can use app actions to jump to specific parts of your Wear OS apps, which can be a really good use case for using Google Assistant. And they added some really nice features to the plugin to make it a little bit easier to test those locally versus needing to publish your application to do that. And finally, they spent a long time talking about tiles, so you can guess we're going to be talking about tiles today. Some of the considerations that we want to think about when you're building for tiles. First, we're going to design for like a glanceable amount of information. It needs to be the most important things, something that people want quickly, minimal interactions because they're just a single face. Save all of your user interactions to actually guide them into their application, where you have a more robust set of UI elements and better interactions for that. We don't want anything that's long-running asynchronous processes that can drain the battery because they're always available, they're always running. And it's just something quick that you want to glance at really fast. Next, we need to, again, optimize for that battery usage. It's going to be running in the background a lot of the time, and so we don't want to drain our user's battery. We want to build with the material guidelines, and so there's a bunch of material components similar across the Android ecosystem that you can use to build out your tiles. We'll look at some later. And those are just going to give them consistency across all their Android tiles into app watch tiles so that they know what to do and what to expect from those. And then finally, we want to complement this with the other surfaces. We want to use the right surface for the right reason across Wear. Wear has a lot more surfaces than some of our Android apps, which you put them in the app and they navigate around. Whereas on Wear, we have these tiles, we have actual apps, we have the complications, and so we have all of these different places that you can go and look for information. And so we want to use this one for that glanceable, low-hanging fruit for information that they need quickly and often. And then last is that we just want to keep it simple, which really goes with all of those other points when we're thinking about what we want to do for tiles. Now we're going to talk at a high level about health services. The reason that I always pair these Wear talks with the health services is because, again, I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to build so that I will wear these watches I have. And when I ask people, why are you so excited about your smartwatch? Why do you wear it all the time? then 90% of the time, the answer for that is something with health. I'm either listening to music while I'm running. I'm taking phone calls while I walk my dog. It's tracking my health at all times. It's tracking my sleep. And so these health services were really interesting to me. I personally don't love any of the health apps out there because I don't like things that yell at me when I don't work out. So I need to build something for me and my use case. So what do you need to know about health services? One, it's a set of powerful algorithms that are built on top of the sensors on the watch. Previously, before health services were introduced, developers had to go directly to those body sensors and the different sensors, take that data directly, and then do their own calculations. This led to inconsistent data across different applications. Those algorithms could be kind of intense. You could get them wrong. And so health services is going to solve a lot of those problems. Those algorithms are already implemented, and they're implemented in a battery-efficient way so that you can reliably and safely use them in Wear apps without having to worry about the impact on the user's battery. I can't see the rest of my speaker notes. So in addition to that, it also gives you that consistency across applications. If everyone is using the same algorithms from health services, then we're going to get the same information from one app to another. So if I'm using my personal app versus someone else's, I can guarantee that that time interval for the amount of time I spend exercising, my heart rate, those are all the same across all these different places. It also is giving us really consistent APIs so that, we'll see long term if that's true, but consistent APIs so that you know how to use them in your applications. So when we talk about health services is going to be the entry point into all of these different ways we're able to monitor health for users. And so from that health services, we get to pull out the client, which is going to give us access to the observable data that we have from those sensors. Our health client is going to provide a way to subscribe to health data in the background or foreground. Our health client is going to be broken into 3 different clients underneath that. We have the measure client, the passive monitoring client, and our exercise client. If we look at each one of these individually, our passive monitoring client is going to let us passively monitor data without requiring any kind of ongoing workout, and it's also going to be expected to run long-term in the background. Next, we have the measure client, which is going to make measurements of health data on a device. It's meant to go really quickly for some short period of time because it's going to sample much quicker than the passive monitoring client. And finally, the exercise client, which is going to provide a way to subscribe to health data of a device during an exercise. And so this is going to be all the different exercises that your watch supports. And this is the big focus of the announcements around the health services at Google I/O is talking about the new exercise that they're supporting. It was specifically around golf. I'm not a golfer. So today we're going to build a health tile, and we'll be using the health client. We're going to be using Horologist, which is a library a lot like a Compass for Wear OS development, and we're going to be using material for tiles. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to start by adding a new tile to an existing health application that monitors heart rate and steps. What does this app do? It's a really simple application. It's going to be built with a Compose UI. We're not going to go super far in depth with this one. And that's powered by a view model. For those of you that don't know, it's the same picture that Mohit just showed. We have that UI sending our actions down. Our view model is going to push state up. Underneath that view model is where we're going to have this health repository. And our health repository is going to be what is going to actually manage our health client that we just talked about. So from our UI, we're going to push down the action to start the service. The view model is going to talk directly to that health repository where we're going to have an instance of that health client. That's going to check the capabilities of our device because not all watches will have the same exercise capabilities, and then register the listeners if we have those available for the 2 things that we're going to monitor, which again is heart rate and steps. Underneath our health repository, we're going to have a data repository, which is just going to be a data store. And so once we register that listener, our health repository is going to push that data down to the data store, and our data store is going to push that back up to the view model so that the view model can update our UI. And so we have this really simple application that we can open the watch app, look at our health data whenever we want it, and it's just going to continue to monitor. But now we want to add this tile so that it's quick and glanceable, and they don't have to actually open the application. They can just check the tile, keep that open, and check what their heart rate and steps are throughout the day. And so what we're going to do is get started by adding a new passive tile service that's going to extend the suspending tile service. This suspending tile service is what comes from that horologist library. We have the choice here to go directly with the Java APIs from Google around the Wear OS, but those require working with listable futures. And so instead, we can use coroutines. And so that's what the horologist library is going to supply for us for these tiles, is that we can instead use the suspending tile service instead of having all of these functions that we're going to override and return these things in the future. We can override suspend functions, although they work in really similar ways. So if you feel comfortable using one, you should be able to go back and forth really easily. Once we have that service, we're going to add it to our manifest. We're going to register our new passive tile service, and we're going to be able to add a couple of different ways to customize that for our users. So we can add things like an app icon, a label that they'll see when it's loading and when they add that to their watch face. And so now we're going to jump back to our passive tile service now that we've registered it in our app manifest. And there's 3 functions we're going to override to build our simple tile using health services in these libraries. One is going to be our tile request, and we see that suspend. So this is coming from that suspending tile service. Number 2 is our resource request. Again, a suspend, otherwise it would be a future. And then finally, we're going to also create a function, layout, which is going to return the actual layout of our tile. So we're going to start from the bottom down, and we're going to start talking about the layout. Now, I have this really horrible habit where I like to look at something really complicated when I'm getting started and being like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. This is like too much. And that's exactly what I did when I was looking at tiles. I went to some Google samples, I looked at it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to learn a new way to build UI. I just learned Compose. This is too much for me. But what I found is that building layouts for tiles, you'll be able to use a lot of the same mental model as building things for Jetpack Compose. Yes, it has some different names. We're going to use this builder pattern with these different layouts, but we'll be able to think about it in a really similar way of setting things up. So we're going to get started using this edge content layout, and this is going to be one of several different layouts that we can use for tiles from the material library. So we're using this edge content. We're going to actually be building a UI pretty similar to the one that's here under edge content, because it gives you that progress bar around the edge, or it gives you a slot for the progress bar around the edge. But there's also a multi-button layout, a primary layout, and a multi-slot layout where you can fill all these in. Here we're already seeing that mental model that we have for both Compose and for tiles, and that these are just slots that we can fill in information similar to how a lot of the Jetpack Compose APIs are set up. So again, we're getting started with edge layout, and so we're going to be building this UI that has our heart rate and our steps out of our goal for the day. And so this one has 4 different slots. So we have our edge content slot for information that goes around the edge. We have a primary label, text content. We have a content, which is what's going to go in the middle, and then also that secondary label content at the bottom. So now that we have our edge content and understand the different slots and functions that we can add to it, we can get started by adding our edge content. We're going to get started with a circular progress indicator, which again, you already see those similarities between our builders and Compose. We can set our progress to the number of steps. We can add some colors, and then we'll build it. This is one of a lot of different material components that we can use. So again, we're relying really heavily on those patterns defined by material to build our application as well. So we're getting started with the circular progress indicator, but these are some of the other material components that they have. In addition to this, they have some of the basic components available for you too, text, image, spacer, to use in those different slots, as well as different layout components that are a little bit more simple, like row and column. So now that we have our circular content, we're just going to work down that list of all the different slots we need to fill out. So we're going to go ahead and set our content, which again is that middle part. So for us, that's just going to be a text. We're going to style it with a typography, and again, add a color to it. From there, we can now add our secondary content, secondary label, text content, text again, add our goal and steps. That's going to be the one that goes below it. And then finally, we're going to set that primary label text content. This one, we had both that heart and that text. And so now we're going to use one of those layout elements that are available to us. And so we use the layout element builder.row. We can set some different parameters on that. So this is going to wrap around and expand the height. So similar to building an XML. We're going to set everything there to be aligned vertically in the center so that everything looks really nice. And then inside that, we again see the same pattern where we can set that content. From there, we can add all the different layout elements we want in that row. So I have my image, which is going to be my little heart with some height and width set. Then I have a spacer to push those apart so they look really nice. And then finally, that text with my heart rate. And that's going to be my full UI. Now, what you might notice about this is that we're not setting an actual resource ID, and that's because our tile does not have access to the resources in our application. And so instead, I'm just passing in a string image from resource. And this is going to take us to that next function as we work our way up this stack of functions. So here we're going to jump into the resource request. And this is where we're going to map resources from our application to what we're going to show in our tile. So we set our version to our resource version, it's a 1, and we have to add all the different IDs to image mapping. Here we see that string defined again, image from resource, and that's mapped here to an actual drawable for my application. It's just a filled heart icon. And so this allows my tile, when it sees that image from resource string, to come back to the mapping and know what to actually show there. I would just continue to add any IDs to map. If I had multiple UI elements in my, multiple image elements in my UI. So now we have our layout, we have our mapping for all of our resources, and we're going to this final function, the tile request. And so from here, the first thing that we're going to do is create our tile timeline. Every tile needs a timeline, and there's a couple different ways that you can do this. My application is going to look the same no matter what time of day it is. It's always going to be the same, although it'd be really cool for it to change color depending on the time of day. And I'd be able to do it from this tile timeline, from this timeline builder. So I have a single timeline, and so I just have this single timeline with this layout. But I'm able to set multiple timelines here that do have some kind of period of validity. So a classic example is building something for your calendar. There you would have different timelines depending on each different meeting on your calendar. And the watch tile is always going to show the one with the shortest amount of validity time coming up. I'm just going to set my root element to this layout function I already built. And from there, I'm going to take that timeline, set it in my tile builder, and build that. And that's going to be the UI that shows. The other thing that we have here is this freshness interval, which is commented out for me. But this is going to let you tell the watch OS, Wear OS, how long until your tile is out of date or stale, and it should try to update. We want to keep that at least over 1 minute. But I'm able to use the data available so that I don't have to do this. So now we've talked about all of this tile information, but we haven't actually talked about the health app at all. So let's talk about where the passive data that we were collecting comes in. So we're able to override on create, and we have that passive data repository. We talked about the way our application was set up. And so we can pull out of that repository the latest heart rate, the latest steps, combine those into a UI state that we can then use in our tile app. Once we do that, we're going to pass in that latest tile to actually set the steps and the heart rate on that application. Now, out of the box, this won't update, although we have a state flow that's coming in. And so we have 2 different ways that we can potentially update that I experimented with. First is that anytime that data changes, we can just request the tile service to actually update our tile. And we can do this anywhere in our application by just calling the tile service, get updater, request update for that particular tile service. The other thing that I tried to do is that we have modifiers, again, just like when we're thinking about Jetpack and Pose, and those are going to let us do things like add interaction to those different slots in our tile. And so the other thing that we could do is set a modifier. I set one on the content in that middle view, and that allows me to make that text clickable. And when you click that, it would automatically load and again, request an update. So instead of automatically updating, when the user pulls it over, they can just tap it and the UI would be updated with the latest data. There are only two different actions that you can have in a tile. Is one, load action, that's what we're doing here, where we're gonna update that data, or opening a different activity. And so when you run into those situations where you have too much information and it needs to be a little bit more interactive for your user, you're able instead to direct them into your Where app and actually open that activity instead of trying to cram it all into the tiles, which are meant to be kept simple. So we've now used all these Java APIs, but what about Glance for tiles? If you don't know, Glance is going to be a library that's built with Jetpack Compose for widgets, and they introduced a tile, Glance for tiles as well. So I also went ahead and experimented with this. And for this case, we're going to go ahead and instead of overriding that suspending tile service, we can override the Glance tile service. Once we do that, we need to override a function content where we have both @composable and @glance composable. And then it's just a straight composable with very limited UI components. So I start with a box, and then I added my column, and instead of having a modifier, we have a glance modifier, but we have a lot of the same things. So I could set my vertical alignment, horizontal alignment, and build about the same UI, adding a row with my image, a spacer, a text, just like we did with the Builder and Java APIs. Add my two texts, and then I am pretty much good to go. I could not ever get the circular one to work, and it was not built in, and so I did not give myself enough time to figure it out. But with just this, I get pretty close to the same thing, and I have all of the same data. I have the step count, I have the heart rate. So what are our considerations for Glance? One, the tiles with the Java APIs is still the recommended way to do it. Glance for tiles is still in alpha, and you can feel it. When I ran into any kind of problems with this, there's not a lot of resources or examples, so you have to be ready to debug yourself. There's a blog post introducing it and giving you about the 10 different composables that are available. I used about half of them. And I actually looked on GitHub for anything that was extending the Glance tile service, and there are none. So nothing to look at here, and just some basic examples from Google about how to potentially use this. And so that makes it really hard to debug if anything comes up and it's not working for you. And so right now, I'd probably still recommend using that builder pattern with the Java APIs if you're thinking about building a Where tile. And so with that, thank you so much. You can find me online, sierraobrien.dev. My email and LinkedIn are there if you want to get in touch. Again, thank you to the organizers for hosting me.
I was wondering about the home screen widgets. Is Glance supposed to kind of bridge the watch and home screen widgets?
Yes. Yeah.
So, but I mean, the Glance tile that you just wrote, would we be able to see that?
On a widget?
Yeah.
I don't think so. It would be a different library.
Yeah.
This is like separately Glance tiles, and you'd need the different Glance libraries for that. It's also not interoperable with regular Compose, so it's completely separate. It goes down into that tile service anyways. So if you build a Where OS with Compose, it also doesn't work with Glance with Compose.
Oh. Tell us.
The main issue with tiles is that they, you code it in your application, but it's rendered on the SysUI application. Yeah. So it's a process communication going on. So that's why it has a special handling. It doesn't surprise me that the Glance composable is probably not very compatible with the regular composable. It looks the same. There's some of the same mechanisms maybe behind it, but it basically, you render something in the background, it gets parceled back to the SysUI.
Yeah, I've worked with the remote view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're the same but different. Other questions?
I've got a question. So what advice do you have for an engineer who is working on a code base which has been for a long time, but they are trying to migrate it to Aware OS or probably trying to create a proof of concept? Do you have any advice on where to get started? What are the first steps? What are the things that you need to keep in mind?
I think the number one advice is like deciding what goes in your Wear OS or your Wear app. They're not meant to be like as fully functional as an application, and so thinking about like the small convenience actions that you can add into a Wear OS that they can do really quickly, because you have to like hold your arm like this and interact with this tiny screen. And so like really nailing down like what is the use case for doing this versus just building a Wear app to build a Wear app.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so like if you have an alarm code and you're trying to turn off the house alarm, it might be nice to just do it here. Because unlocking your phone is probably going to take too long.
Hang up a phone call if you don't like. This is my use case.
I'm still trying to find mine.
Muting the phone was an app that I wrote for Aware to mute the phone just to make sure when I was on stage that I knew my phone was not going to make any noise. Because, you know, it's kind of like that. I haven't seen Soundcheck, I haven't seen that, but I think, like, you can mute the watch now. Like, when I was muting the phone, the watch didn't have a speaker or volume. Now, they're sold separately. It's interesting. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
So